April 20. Chapter 1. The fullness of the moon made it all more complicated. The intense silver glow cast shadows as defined as midday, despite the thin veil of cloud cover. Dressed entirely in black, with only his eyes showing beneath his hood, Jonathan Grave moved like a shadow in the stillness. Crickets and tree frogs, nocturnal noisemakers by the thousands, gave him some cover, but not enough. There was never enough cover. He reminded himself that he was in Indiana soybean country, facing a clueless adversary. But then he remembered the penalty for failing to respect one's adversary. The Patron brothers had been arguing for every one of the 20 minutes that Jonathan had been monitoring them. The bud in his left ear picked up every word, beamed to him from the tiny wireless transmitter he'd stuck to the lowest pane of the front window. From what he'd been able to determine from his hasty research in the past few hours, the Patrons were nobodies. Just a pair of losers from West Virginia whose motives for this kidnapping adventure were unclear, and from Jonathan's perspective, irrelevant. The stress of the kidnapper's ordeal had clearly begun to take its toll. They'd counted on Thomas Hughes's parents coughing up the ransom quickly, and now they couldn't figure out what had gone wrong. "I'm tired of being jerked off by that asshole," Lionel said. The older of the two, he was the hothead. "Old Stevie Hughes needs more proof. Maybe we should just cut off a piece of Tommy and send it to his old man in an envelope." Jonathan picked up his pace, kneeling in the dew-wet grass to unsling his black rucksack and open the flap. With his night vision gear in place, the darkness burned like green daylight. "You're not serious," said little brother Barry. His tone carried an unstated plea. He was the pacifist. Jonathan liked pacifists. They lived longer. "Watch me." Lionel continued to rant as Jonathan produced a coil of detonating cord from his pack and slid a K-bar knife from its scabbard on his left shoulder. He measured out about an inch of cord, sliced it off the roll, and slid the knife back home. With a loop of black electrician's tape, he attached the det cord to the cable that brought electrical service to the house, then slid the initiator into place. Det cord was the best stuff in the world. A woeful bit of overkill in this case, but unquestionably effective. "Chris said to wait," Barry said to his brother. Jonathan pressed the transmit button in the center of his Kevlar vest and whispered, "Boss's name is Chris." It was the missing bit of data from 3 days of gathering intel. A familiar voice crackled in his ear. "Copy that. Any sign of him yet?" "I was going to ask you," Jonathan whispered. "I've only got 2 friends here." They knew from an eyewitness to Thomas Hughes's kidnapping that 3 hooded figures had carried the naked Ball State student out of his apartment in the middle of the night. Jonathan didn't like the fact that one member of the team remained unaccounted for. The tone and pace of the kidnappers' argument told him that their frustration level had passed the tipping point into desperation. He moved faster. "This whole thing is hopelessly messed up," Lionel said. "Maybe Chris got picked up by the cops." "Maybe you're just paranoid," Barry soothed. "This was supposed to be easy money. My ass." Jonathan was at the back of the house now, the black side as he thought of it, and it was time to prepare the doors for entry. The Patrons had stashed Thomas Hughes in the basement. In this part of the country it was probably called a storm cellar, or maybe a root cellar. Constructed entirely of stone, from the outside it could be accessed through 2 heavy wooden doors that sloped at a shallow angle from ground level. When the time came, those doors would be Jonathan's point of entry.